In the next chapter, we're going to discuss a little bit about this open quantity and how to close it, how to block it, how to mark the delivery as complete, and all that kind of stuff. So like we were discussing in the previous chapter, we have ordered for 100 kilos of flour and we got 100 kilos of flour. The vendor did send 100 kilos of flour or coffee, and of course he sent an invoice for 100. Very good. But we found out that 50 was defective, so we returned 50. That means we only got a net of 50, and the vendor issued a credit memo for 50, so that's settled. But what about the original requirement of 100 pounds? We needed 100 pounds of coffee, right? And that's why we have ordered for 100. But we lost 50 because of a quality issue. So we need 50 more. And that's what was reflected in the open quantity in SAP. This guy over here. It says open quantity is 50. Now, sometimes you might not require that 50. You're like, okay, that's fine, let it go. But the system does not let it go. It says there is still an open quantity of 50. What are the implications of that open quantity? The implications are the PO still remains open. It's not closed yet. Meaning the PO is not complete because we have asked for 100 and the vendor only delivered 50. So we need 50 more. Now sometimes we might not require the 50 more. We can say, let it go, we might not need the 50 now. We can order it next month. But the system does not know that. The system thinks that we need 50 pounds of coffee. And in order to find out the open POs by vendor or by a number of other such criteria, you can go to this transaction. ME2L, ME2L, hit enter and select your vendor, and in your scope of parameters type in WE101. Alright, so this shows you the open goods receipt, meaning goods that we are yet to receive. You can select one or more than one vendor and click execute. Remember, our purchase order was 45007193. We go back here. This is the PO 45007193, and it says 50 is still to be delivered and still to be invoiced, and the original quantity was 100. Right? So this is a report that shows you all the open deliverables from a particular vendor. Now we can let it remain open, meaning we need 50 more is the signal that we are giving the system, and the system assumes that we need 50 more, and the vendor also assumes that we need 50 more because we have ordered for 100, he has delivered only 50, and 50 is yet to come in. So far so good. But like I said, sometimes we don't need the 50. We might want to say, that's fine, we have enough for this month. Let's cancel that remaining 50. So how do you ensure that you close that 50 quantity of PO? You no longer need it. right? So there are a couple of ways to do it. The easiest way to do it is to go to delivery, and I'm sorry, I need to go to change mode. Okay, the easiest way to do it is to mark that delivery as complete, that line item's delivery as complete, right? So let's do that. Let's click delivery complete and save, right? Now if you go to the delivery schedule, do you see an open quantity here? You see, this is blank. Although the purchase order quantity is 100 and the goods receipt is 50, meaning we have asked for 100 and the vendor has delivered 50, there is no open quantity because we have marked that delivery as complete. Now if you go back to that report and re-execute it like so, you see that PO is gone. The 93 PO is gone. You no longer see it. 90, 91, there is no 93. That means that the purchase order is no longer open, right? This is one way to do it. Another way to do it is to block that line item. Like how? Let me go back to display change of that PO. Uncheck this flag, which means there's going to be an open quantity of 50, right, as usual. Now you can select that line item like so and block it. You see this lock? So when you block it, see again the open quantity has gone. So what is the difference between blocking and marking the delivery as complete? When you mark the delivery as complete, like here, this means that you're saying my delivery is complete, you no longer need to worry about it. It's typically final. You don't change it ever, although you have the facility to change it. But when you block it, this could be either temporary or permanent. Although both achieve the same effect, when you lock that line item, you're saying typically you temporarily block certain line items. Why? For example, there is a quality issue and you want to block all the line items in all the purchase orders for that material. You could block that. Or you have already created a purchase order with coffee, flour, sugar, 10 different kinds of materials, but you want to temporarily stop the delivery of a particular material or issuing the PO for that line item, meaning there is coffee, there is sugar, there is flour. Suddenly the warehouse guy comes up and says, oh, we got enough flour or enough sugar, so don't order that now, but maybe 2 days later. So you have a choice. You can delete that line item or you can block that line item like this. This means that the delivery has not happened, but you are not going to issue that line item as a PO to the vendor. The rest of the line items are going to go as usual. So it's a status flag. It just says that, you're temporarily blocking it. You could later unblock it like so. So it's a temporary way of blocking items so that they're not acted upon further either by us or by the vendor. But delivery complete is a deliberate way of saying, hey, you know what? I think we are done with this line item. So if there is any shortfall, don't worry about filling it. We are good. Right? So these are the two ways. So there is another way. So let's see what we have discussed. We said that out of 100, 50 remained open, and in order to close them, there were three methods. We have discussed two of them. One was to mark the delivery as complete. The second is to block that line item. And we have seen the differences between these two. In the next chapter, we are going to talk about something called as delivery tolerance. Alright, so in the previous chapter, we have seen two ways that we can block or mark that line item as complete from a procurement perspective. There is a third way to do it, and that is called delivery tolerance. What is a delivery tolerance? Where is it set and how is it used? Let's take an example. Say we have ordered 100 kilos of coffee in a PO, and the vendor has delivered, say, 90 kilos. Now, 10 is remaining, right? Now, for that 10 kilos of coffee, do we really need the extra 10 kilos? Meaning, for some reason, the vendor has delivered only 90 kilos, maybe because he's out of stock or whatever reason. Now, in order to deliver the remaining 10 kilos, the truck of the vendor, right, has to make another round with just 10 kilos of coffee from his warehouse to our warehouse. Now, for some materials, it might not be worth it, because for 10 kilos of coffee or 5 kilos of coffee, it might not be worth the effort in terms of logistics to deliver the goods, right? We have seen this in Amazon. For low value goods, the freight is going to be so expensive in comparison to the quality of the goods. So it does not make sense to do that extra logistics step of taking the 5 kilos or 3 kilos or whatever the shortfall is, depending on the nature of the goods. Now, if it's a coffee machine that costs like 10,000 pounds or $10,000, it makes sense. If you order two of them, only if one of them comes in, the next one also needs to come. But coffee is something that we procure on a monthly basis, weekly basis, daily basis. So if there is a shortfall of, say, 10 kilos or 10 pounds, it doesn't really matter. So depending on the type of goods, we can say that, even if you deliver by a tolerance of 5% or 10%, it doesn't matter, that's fine. We'll deem the purchase order as complete. You don't need to deliver the remaining. And of course, the vendor is only going to charge for whatever he has delivered. He's not going to charge for 100 in this case. He's only going to charge for 90, which is fair, right? Now, this concept is called as a tolerance, delivery tolerance. There's also something called as order tolerance, but we're not going to go there. Delivery tolerance. And we know that this is a property of a material, meaning you cannot generalize this for every material. Coffee has a certain tolerance, sugar has a certain tolerance, flour has a certain tolerance, muffins have a certain tolerance, coffee machine has a certain tolerance, pastry has a different kind of tolerance. So naturally, where is this set? Of course, in the material master. So that's the first place that the system will look when it wants to look at the tolerance. We'll see the effect of tolerance in a minute, but let's see where it is set. So the first place where the system is going to look for tolerances is in the material master. Material master, right? So delivery tolerance is set in the material master. So how is it set? Let's go set it for coffee beans. So go to MM02, enter coffee beans, enter purchasing data, click OK. Plant is Chicago, and there you go. This is where you set the tolerance. Let me change it. I'm not able to. It's grayed out. So how do you set the tolerance really? It's grayed out, right? It's set with something called as a purchasing value key, which is an aggregator field, basically a summarization field that has so many different values. So it has the reminders, it has the under delivery tolerance, it has the over delivery tolerance. We're not going to talk about reminders now, but we can check out this guy over here. So purchasing value key 2 has an under delivery tolerance of 10% and an over delivery tolerance of 10%. So select that and hit enter, right? And you see that this value changes. 10%, 10%. Now, can you define your own purchasing value keys? Yes, you can. The reason why purchasing value keys are defined is because you don't really want different kinds of tolerances to be set at the material master level without any kind of authorization. There should be a certain standardized way in which you set these tolerances and reminders. So that's why it's set in configuration, and you can change these things manually. Like you can make it to 12%. So somebody has to go and create a purchase value key that has a corresponding under delivery tolerance of 12%. So the next question you have is, where do you define these purchasing value keys? Okay, it's just a complicated way of setting these under delivery or over delivery tolerances. Don't read too much into this purchasing value key. It's just a complicated way of setting these tolerances. If it were up to me, I would have left this to the user to be able to set it to whatever, but I'm sure SAP has a very good reason why a purchasing value key is used instead of manually setting these tolerances. Remember, SAP is a system that's designed with the requirements of hundreds and thousands of Fortune companies, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000. So whatever SAP does, there is a very, 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 very valid reason behind them. Okay, and of course not every company is the same, and you can choose to deviate from it, but there are certain things that you cannot deviate from. For example, you cannot manually maintain the under delivery tolerance like this, 6%, not possible unless I define a purchasing value key, right? So let's go save it and see where this purchasing value key is defined, and then after that we're going to see the effect of setting this under delivery tolerance. Okay, purchase value key. Do you want to save it? Yes. So go back, go to SPRO, IMG, Material Management, Purchasing, go to Material Master, Purchasing Value Keys. Now, you don't have to really remember the path. You can just go here, search, and you can search for value keys. Because I don't remember the entire text, I'm going to just pick some part of it and say enter. It's going to search the entire menu path of SPRO and show you all the different areas that contains these texts. So there are standard value keys in capacity planning, standard value keys in MRP or maintenance plans, work centers, and then from process orders. And in purchasing, there is this purchasing value key, right? So if you click on that and say OK, it's going to point out to the exact location in SPRO where that particular configuration resides. So like I said, you don't have to remember all the different menu paths and transaction codes and all that in SPRO. You can just go search. It's like Google. You don't need to bookmark everything that you need on your browser. Just go search and Google will tell you where's what. So go to purchasing value keys, and we have selected 2, I believe, and 2 has a delivery tolerances of 10%. Right? You could create your own, like new entries, and then give a purchasing value key, then define these reminders, define a delivery tolerance. Okay, so we'll see the effect of this now. Go to ME21N and start creating a purchase order. 4001 for material coffee beans, quantity of 100, and we have created a PO for coffee beans, and we have set the delivery tolerances in the material master. And if you go to the delivery, you should see that the delivery tolerance should be 10%. But I don't see a delivery tolerance here. Why? Because delivery tolerance not just comes from the material master. If there is a delivery tolerance in the purchase info record, that takes precedence over the material master's delivery tolerance. Let's check it for a second. Do you want to save it? No. Go to logistics, material management, purchasing, master data, info record, and for 4001 vendor, this coffee beans Chicago plant, click OK, and in the second screen, hit enter again. There is a field where you can set the delivery tolerance. What's the delivery tolerance here? 0. So that's the reason why you don't see delivery tolerance in the purchase order for this material vendor combination. What this means is delivery tolerance is not just set at the material master level, it's also set at the purchase info record. Right? So this is given the first preference, and if nothing exists here, then it goes here. You want to see it in action? Let's go change this. Change and set 5% here, 5% here. Under delivery, over delivery. Right? And save it. Now let's go create a purchase order. Of course, for coffee beans, quantity of 100. Do you see a 5% here? That is coming, of course, from the purchase info record that we have just set. Right? So that proves that the first preference is the purchase info record. The data of under delivery and over delivery from the purchase info record gets pulled into the purchase order for that material and vendor combination. What happens if I delete this or if it does not exist? Let's go see it. Do you want to save it? No. Go to flag for deletion, enter, complete info record, purchase order data, doesn't matter, save it. So this purchase info record is deleted. Now let's go create this purchase order. For coffee beans, quantity of 100. Okay, go put a price. Because there's no purchase info record, it's asking me for the price again. If there was a purchase info record, it would have automatically picked it from there. Enter a price of $10. Now go to the delivery and you see the under delivery and the over delivery tolerances are 10%, which is what we have set here. So we have set to 10% and we have set this to 5%. Remember? Now that the purchase info record is deleted, it's picking up from the material master. And that's why I said the second preference is the material master. If it exists in the purchase info record, it goes there. If it does not, it falls back to the material master. Well, now we know where the delivery tolerances are set, and we also understand what the delivery tolerances mean. Now we just have to see it in action. So what happens when the delivery tolerance is 10%? Let's see it with the same example. Let's order a PO for 100 kilos and set the delivery tolerance to 10%, right? And then we're going to deliver first goods receipt of say 50 kilos and see what happens. And then we're going to say another 40 kilos, which will make it 90, by which point we would have received 90% of the goods, which means that we have achieved the 10% tolerance, and then see what happens. Ideally, the expectation is that by the time we achieve 90% of the goods, the vendor does not need to deliver further. The PO item can be deemed as complete, right? That's the intention. We want to cut it off. We don't need it anymore. Let's see it in action. So the first step, create a PO for 100, right? We have it right here. We created a PO for 100. And we can save this. Right? Copy this PO. Control C. Okay, now go to MIGO. It's not a return delivery, it's goods receipt. Against the PO, Control V. So the first lot we are going to receive is for 50 kilos, right? So go select a quantity of 50. So the vendor is under delivering by 50. That's fine. We're going to say item OK, and we're going to receive it into the coffee storage location. And save it. Now let's open that PO. Go to the delivery schedule and see the open quantity there. 50. Reasonable, right? Go back. And the second delivery is for 40. So 50 plus 40 is 90. 90 kilos should come right within that tolerance of 10% of 100. Go do MIGO again for 40. Goods receipt against the PO. This time SAP has calculated automatically that we need only 50, not 100. Right? Because 50 has already been delivered. So it says there's only a provision for 50 more. How much do you want to take? Well, let's say the vendor did not give us 50. He only gave us 40. Right? Where? In the coffee bean storage location. Click item OK and save. Now by this time the vendor has delivered 50 plus 40, 90 kilos, which falls within the 10% tolerance limit. That means that out of 100 he has delivered 90, which is within 10% of the tolerance limit. So the open quantity should not be 10 anymore, because we don't need the remaining 10. We can let it go. If it delivers 100, it's fine. If it delivers 90 also, it's fine. That's what we are trying to say with delivery tolerance. Now we should not see the remaining 10 as an open quantity. 100 minus 90 is 10. And that should not remain as an open quantity because we have set a delivery tolerance of 10%. Do we really see that? Go back. Open the PO. Go to delivery schedule. And we still see an open quantity of 10. Well then, what's the point in specifying an under delivery tolerance of 10%? So we came back to the same shape. There's no point. So how to fix this? Well, in defining under delivery tolerances and over delivery tolerances, in order for the system to deem that PO as complete when the goods received falls within that tolerance, there is a configuration that has to be set. Where do we set that configuration? SPRO IMG. Go to materials management. And instead of going to purchasing, go to inventory, because that's where it is set. And go to goods receipt, set tolerance limits. Once again, you don't have to remember this path. Oops, looks like I went to the wrong path. This is not the right path. Okay, this is the right path. Set delivery completed indicator. Click OK. And then this is by plant. So you can set this parameter by plant. Not all plants need to behave the same, right? So for Chicago plant, we want to set the delivery complete indicator if the delivery falls within the tolerance limit. Okay, so now save it and save it as tr because it's configuration, and then you still see the open quantity, right? Because the change in configuration does not affect current transactions. You got to start all over again. So what do we need to do? Create a PO for 100 quantity and deliver only 90 of them, right? So if you look at the delivery, you should see the 10% tolerance there, which is good, and then save it. Copy the PO. Okay, save the PO, and then out of a quantity of 100, only deliver 90. Well, we could split it up into 50, 40, it doesn't matter though. We are only going to deliver a net of 90. Right? Where? Into the coffee storage location. Click OK and save. So out of 100, the vendor has delivered 90. Now let's go back to the PO and see if based on the tolerance of 10%, right, does the system still show that there is an open quantity of 10? Ideally it should not, right? So go to delivery schedule, and what's the open quantity? 0. So that means that out of 100, even if 90 was delivered, the system is deeming that line item as complete because the delivery tolerance is 10%, and in inventory management we have configured the system for Chicago plant so that when the deliveries or goods receipts fall within the tolerance limit, the system says, I'm fine with it, you don't need to deliver more. So let's look at that report ME2L, and for 4001 Chicago plant, see the 9.5 purchase order that we have just created did not turn up as an open order. Why? Because we have configured the system in such a way that when the deliveries or goods receipts reach a certain threshold as defined by the under delivery, the system says I'm good to go. Now, same thing happens with over delivery. Meaning, if we have set an over delivery tolerance of 10%, the vendor can deliver goods by up to 10% more. So instead of 100 kilos, if he can deliver 110 kilos, which is 10% more than what was created for in a purchase order, that's still fine. That's called as over delivery tolerance. And of course he's going to charge for 110 kilos or 90 kilos in case of under delivery. Alright, so that is how you handle shortfall. There were 3 methods like we discussed. The first was marking the delivery as complete. The second was to block that line item. And the third is using delivery tolerances. So this is the third method. 1, 2, and 3. Simple, right? Alright, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about another interesting topic called return PO.